Hey guys, it's me, Animation Girl, here to do my very first tutorial on how to draw hands. So hopefully this will give you just like a good basic idea on how to break down hands and how to draw them. I'm going to be using some reference of my own hands, so we'll start with basically like female reference hands. But I got asked to do this by my best friend who says that he thinks that I do hands very well and is very interested in seeing how I would teach people to do hands. So hopefully this goes well. So let's dive into it. Okay, so here are some reference images I took of myself, obviously, just to have something to work with and explain and get started. So let's move that out here. So I'm going to turn a couple of these off. Let's just start with, oh, where'd it go? Okay, sorry, I just turned it off. What is it? This one? Nope. Did this one? Okay, my bad. Sorry, guys. All right, so this is just like a basic open palm. So what I was going to start with is showing you how to break this down in a way that makes sense and isn't too confusing. So you'll see when you do like look at anatomy books on how to draw and other people teaching tutorials, they probably break down hands in a similar fashion. But if you understand this concept, it just makes a whole bunch more sense, and it doesn't mean that you actually have to do it this way every time, but if you are just starting out learning or you have difficulty with it, this might help you. So to start, just going to block it out kind of. You can see that the hand in the center is more like shaped like that. And then, of course, like you've got your knuckle systems, and a lot of people will break a finger down kind of like that. I don't particularly break my fingers down that far. I will just like draw one giant rectangle in a sense. And then the thumb. Which, I mean, I guess you could put like a circle joint there if you really are having some extra difficulty with that, to kind of get the breakdown of the thumb side. But that's just a basic breakdown of a start, like if you were to put it into simple shapes, basically. So if I were to, I'm going to take off my reference. If I were going to draw this, not tracing, okay, this is how I go about it. I kind of do it the same way. So I start, you don't want to start with the fingers ever. You always want to start with the wrist, where the wrist is, then the base of the hand, and then the fingers. That helps you keep your proportions, because trust me, hands are always drawn in a disproportionately from the rest of the body, because they seem larger than they really are, or seem like they should be larger than they really are. So having your wrist proportions and arm proportions on your image be accurate helps you proportion your hand down. So anyway, so there's the wrist, which you can see is just, you know, it's just like a little rectangle. Then we go into the palm of the hand, which again, I'm just breaking it down by the angles that I showed you guys. So it's not a, it's a square, but it's not like a perfect square. It's more like a pentagon. And then the thumb, this is what, like, this is why I always do mine, but like a pentagon shape and not a square, is because you've got your index, or your middle finger here that's always longer than the other fingers. And it kind of helps when you've got this, you know, this biggest knuckle kind of accented out. And then you can bring your pointer finger in, and it'll just naturally follow that kind of curve. It kind of helps you. And which also helps you in the flow of setting the thumb in, because the thumb is, hands are awkward, you know, hands are weird, and the thumb is much shorter, way further down, and so knowing that, you know, that kind of gets you the start to where you can start blocking in your thumb accurately um, in the right spot. Okay, and then laying in my other fingers. Okay, so I mean, this isn't the, I mean, it's not exactly the same as my reference. I wasn't trying to make it exactly the same, but getting the blocking down on this is the basic hand position. You know, it's the basic high five. So that's the shapes. These shapes are going to get you there, especially, like I said, especially this pentagram shape for the hand base, palm of the hand. I think really helps you line up your fingers as you go through. So there's that pretty simply. Let's see what's next. What do I got next? Okay, so this one I threw in here because it's slightly bent fingers and more natural fingers, not like, I'm holding on to something. So we got the same thing. You've got the same, you know, pentagram shape here. I feel like I'm not saying the word correctly. Pentagon? Pentagon. Anyway, wrist rectangle, and then fingers. Now, this is where I might suggest breaking it down into more than one rectangle for the fingers, only because the knuckles are bent. So because they're bent, adding the knuckles into your sketch shape breakdown helps you to determine spatial recognition, that it's going like deeper into space and not just being straight and flat. And actually, if I turn this off all the way, you can kind of see how shortening the tips of the fingers together and giving those knuckle lines have helped make depth within the sketch. So just drawing that out again, freehanded, not tracing, so you can get an idea too. So again, we're going to start with the wrist proportions, which since the wrists are all cut off, they're probably just going to all be little rectangles. And then you want your pentagon shape for the hand palm. Okay, and then sometimes I'll start with the thumb just because it's out of the way, and it also kind of helps me determine finger proportions a little bit better, but it's up to you. It's not going to make a difference really where you start at. A lot of times you're going to end up correcting things if they're too long or too short anyway. Okay, so I'm going to start again with the middle finger like I did the last time, just for blocking seems to be easier. So, and I am going to do the 2 rectangle method just because it is going to help with depth and space. So I'm just blocking in where the fingers should be. Or where I think they should be. And then this ring finger kind of angles back in. So I'm going to give it a curve. And sometimes what I'll do is like here where I've drawn like the curve on this edge, that kind of just helps me like define this part. Kind of sometimes helps visually like give the finger the right dimension that you want when it's not like a dead-on straight, although this one isn't necessarily angled to the side of the image, but I think it just helps. And then this one, see, I'm going to redo this because this is a little too far out there, and it's probably because my palm shape was a little off. So, yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like, if I were continuing, I'd probably be refining this even further and even further and even further. The thing about these sketches, what's great is that they're not you know, they're not set in stone. This is just getting your hand positions down. This is just practice, basically. You know, so you can get something that kind of, you know, gives you the right look towards what you're trying to do. And I apologize if I'm rambling. Sometimes if when I'm concentrating on drawing, my words don't come out all that great. But there, I mean, there's a pretty good general idea of the hand to the left. You know, I maybe put too much gap in the center there, but I want to fix that. Yes, I'm working digitally, so I get to cheat like this, but move that over a little bit. But yeah, so you guys kind of get the idea on that one. So sideways hands, I guess you could call it, are usually, I don't want to say more difficult than open palms, but actually in a sense like sometimes are. Especially if you're always doing characters with their hands rested at their sides, you know, you always get that kind of side angle, and it can be kind of difficult to achieve, like because half the fingers are hidden, you don't see all the knuckles, things like that. So I threw this one in here. So again, the wrist is rectangle, and what's interesting about here is because you have the thumb is a large portion of what you see, is that rounded thumb, and then the palm shape is no longer a pentagon. I like to just draw it out kind of like an actual rectangle this time, but more like a parallelogram. One that, you know, this needs to angle out a little bit that way, and this needs to angle out a little bit this way, because obviously it's unless it's perfectly straight, your palm isn't going to be at a perfect 90-degree angle to your wrist and your fingers. So I kind of flare that out a little bit, and then the thumb, you know, this is a good time to use a big circle joint for where the thumb bone connects, because that's really what you're going to see is that curvature here. Sometimes if I don't do that, I'll do the rectangle with like a lump on a curve on it, a lump on it, and then from there draw the thumb, and then going into the fingers is where you know, things can start to become tricky again because of the levels. So the first, because this is bent, I will do it into separate rectangles. So one rectangle for the lower, and then another rectangle for the upper. And then I'll start coming in behind and laying in the back fingers, which in this case, since some of it's hidden, I just start laying in the rectangle portions that can be seen. Okay, so I'm going to take that off right there. So you can kind of see how that blocks in those back fingers. And this would be like that. So, you know, when I'm working with reference, obviously I can really use my geometric shapes a lot accurately because I'm seeing reference. A lot of times I'm drawing hands without reference at all, and I promise you it's not that easy to do. But when you practice a lot, you will definitely get better at it. So there's the rectangle. We're gonna, oh, I made it white. Okay. Then we're gonna block in our parallelogram for the palm, the thumb. And I'm drawing these freehand a second time just so that you guys can kind of see my flow with it without tracing, without trying to go over it exactly. So you can kind of see the steps that I'm taking in my mind, which, you know, I've kind of explained, but haven't completely done. The thing about it too is you kind of with these side angles, have to remember where the fingers are connecting in the background. Yeah, looks like my hand. I don't know if this one feels really more organic and less geometric, but also like not as proportionate. But um, but yeah, you got to kind of remember that like this area here. Actually, I'll do it in the purple. This area right here. That's the knuckles are going off into space, you know, and the fingers are connecting there, and it's, you know, it's not easy to visualize that right off the bat, but you know, when I'm doing a hand that's just like, you know, to the side of a character, like here's the wrist, you know, there, and then like maybe it's, you know, that's their hips, whatever. Kind of same thing, you know, you want, it would be the circle, you know, for the thumb. You want it to just kind of feel natural. There's the palm. And then you get that, you really just want to lay in that first finger and the right length and everything. That might be a little lengthy. I have a tendency to sometimes start out by making my fingers a little too long. But you want to lay in that pointer finger where you want it to be, you know, and then you can just lay in the other fingers behind it. That's where it gets a lot easier. Once you get that pointer finger in there, you know, laying the other fingers behind it isn't as much of a challenge in theory, because they're all going to pile up on top of each other, depending on how they're bent. So this is a random example there. She looks like she's wearing gloves, right? So yeah, you know, with the side views, you just got to pay attention to the, really mainly this portion. Once you get past that, getting the fingers in there is just a matter of taking your time. Where's this next one? Oh, my head's been in the corner. Okay, so in this one we've got like a, not a fully closed hand, a semi-closed hand, which, I don't know, if they're maybe could be holding something loosely in their hand or something like that, is a good pose to have. Now, when I'm doing inside palms, I always break it down by, again, that thumb joint, but then also the other pad of the palm, because these two are, you know, your nice squishy pads that you can rest against, and it really makes the shape of the inside palm of the hand. So I do that. Obviously, your wrist, I forgot. And then your palm on the inside again is still a pentagon, a little bit. Then you just have your thumb, and then this is where the fingers become challenging in this type of pose, because they're bent over on each other, and this is where breaking it down into rectangular shapes and with spatial depth become extremely important, because it's going to look really weird if your spatial depth isn't right. And actually, tips in this instance, I wouldn't do a rectangle on the pointer finger because it'll look weird. I'll do like a circle actually, and that'll give it that round tip shape. So that's super rough, super rough. So do I have to do this one? This one's hard. Okay, I'm also drawing it on the left side. Move this keyboard out of my way. Okay, so again, with the wrist, that wrist is really fat. Let me trim that out. Okay, wrist rectangle. Okay, and if you prefer, sometimes when I draw, you know, especially like I showed you with the hand on the side, like if I'm drawing a circle joint for the wrist, might also help you as well, or like a larger circle, make it a cylinder here, if that helps you. That is another way you can do it. Okay, but you put in the rectangle, and then, all right, if I were just going to jump in and tackle this with my shapes, I told you this was hard. Yeah, I would start over here with the thumb joint. And the thing about it, because on this one, the thumb is definitely just squished right up against the palm of the hand. So that pentagram's going to come right off of that and come down. And you see, I've done this too small. Like the hand, I made the wrist way bigger than I just made my hand is now. Which, since I'm not, like, since I don't have a larger body, that's okay. But if I were, this was like I had drawn it out the whole picture and then this was attaching, I would definitely need to draw that hand bigger. Okay, so then this is where it gets hard. So the pointer finger, really you can block in until it gets to that tip, that fingertip, because that's where the difference starts to show in the space, where you try to get the eye to recognize that it's not completely straight. So like I said, again, that rounded tip helps separate the space, you know, and you can put in, I mean, I don't generally put in, you know, like the knuckle lines, the wrinkle lines, but you can, it might help. Depends on what style you're going for. Okay, this middle finger is completely bent, so we're going to do a fingertip in a more rectangular shape. A little bit of curve for that middle knuckle, and then it's going to come down. And then we'll put a little wing on the inside, because you've got to show this part where the finger has folded over on itself. And I apologize, these are not great sketches. They're okay sketches, but that's the whole point of a sketch. It's the whole point of learning how to draw hands, is just sketching it out 100 times and then refining it. Okay, then on this one, I would start with the middle knuckle, because that's a pretty decently sized rectangle here. Then the tip, and then the pinkies flush up against it, so same thing, rectangle, and then the pinky tip, and then you can kind of come down around and get that connected. And then, you know, when you're doing your details, you can put in the folds and stuff like that. It will make it a little bit more realistic looking. My thumb's not as long as the picture, but it's not strange either. Kind of put some wrinkles in there. So I mean, that's basic. I think that finger is a little jacked up. Looks jacked up. Anyway, but that's the shape breakdown. That's the basic shape breakdown. Again, like I said, you constantly go in and refine it, line it up, make it look the way that it needs to look exactly. But people will get the idea. You know, this is good. I won't scroll. Okay. All right. Back of the hand, basically. That's pretty much what it is. So again, you've got your wrist, circle joint, your pentagon, which again, if I don't think I explained this clearly. Top point of the pentagon, right between the pointer and middle finger, gets your angles. It just gets your angles perfect, in my opinion. And then you bring that down, back down to the wrist. And it's okay, you can bring it in. It just depends on like what kind of hand, you know, obviously the more slender, delicate hand, dropping that line back in towards the wrist is going to help that. And then you've got your thumb joint. And then since the thumb is bent, I'm going to break it down into a rectangle and then like a curved triangle for the tip. Okay, and then same thing with the fingers because they're also bent. So rectangle, curved tip in space, rectangle, curved tip in space, and then these two just become rectangles because they're hidden in the back. So, ta-da! Okay, one more time. Freehand. So we've got the wrist here as a rectangle, circular wrist joint, and then get the angle of the pentagon, the thumb, and then how does that go? Rectangle, okay, like that, and then rectangle, and then when you're refining these, like the pinky and the ring finger for something like this, you just curve it over at the top of the rectangle, and that'll give it the illusion that it's rounded like a real finger, and that it's not a perfect rectangle, and people will think, oh, that just goes back off into space. Perfect. So, actually, I did that one pretty good. Also, too, like, knuckles are weird. Like, your pointer and your middle finger knuckles are pretty lined up pretty well. Your ring finger knuckles is a little bit shorter, and then, of course, your pinky knuckles, like, super short. And that gives you, you know, something kind of like that motion, and you really need to remember that when working with hands. Kind of, if I go back to the beginning image here, again, fingers do an arc, you know, pinky, ring, middle, pointer. You know, that if you remember that arc, that will really help you keep your finger proportions as you're drawing those. All right, a few more here, guys. A few more that I think would be good. This one's kind of similar to the closed hand we did, slightly closed hand we did earlier. So I'll just go over the shapes here. Wrist again. And again, I like to do that thumb joint and then the little pad on the other side. Slightly bent, so I'll break it into two parts. Pentagon shape. Which I know isn't always, you know, pentagons, you know, like that. It's not always, it's not even. It's not an even pentagon, obviously. So you'll just have to remember that, which way is best, like which, you know, angle for which scenario, I should say. And then you can just do finger, finger, and then I would do round for these tips. Because it's kind of, you know, like that. So, let's see if I can pull it off. Okay, we got the wrist, it's a rectangle, thumb joint, little pad, your pentagon shape, slight shape, your thumb, okay, your finger, middle finger, and then tip shape curved over, and then I'm going to put the pinky in since it's overlapping, tip shape curved over, kind of small. It's a little off, but you know, something like that. This one's not as curved as I drew it. More out of shape. There we go. Okay. All right. I hope this isn't too long a video, but I just wanted to give you some different examples that might help you with different things that you might encounter or be wanting to draw. So, open palm. Well, am I not? I don't have any layer. Okay, open palm. Again, you're gonna have that thumb joint right here. Your little pads here, but with your hand being so open, it's not as poignant. Then you got the thumb. Okay, and then the thumb here. And then, now this pentagon's not going to be as pentagony. That's right, because your palm's open. You could do this as a direct rectangle, or square, but I still feel like giving that point here helps you remember the fingertips. So I would definitely put that little hat on it. And then your fingers. And now, again, I just do finger-shaped sausages because I don't really feel that they need to be defined any further since they're straight open. Okay, so thumb joint, little thumb, and thumb can be awkward when it's like all the way out, open, stretched out like that. It just doesn't feel like it's a natural thing, but it is. Okay, your pentagram in there. And then your finger sausages. Okay. There. So, something like that. Okay. Then I thought, hey, everyone's always doing stuff with cell phones. Let's draw a hand with a cell phone in it. So, holding objects is interesting. And it's interesting because so much of the hand is discarded or blocked. Like in this instance, it really comes down to how the tips of the fingers interact with the object they're holding. So circles for the tips to make it easier to define. Okay, so if I were to do this, you draw the object that you want it to be holding, thumb tip, and now I'm not starting in the same manner I was before because obviously there isn't a palm of the hand and that makes up most of the shape that you're defining. So you just kind of block out where the finger should go. So tip of the thumb, curving over to that thumb joint, which is going to be hidden back here. Other palm, and then you've got your pinky's going to come over, and then your ring finger's going to come over, and then middle finger's kind of trying to balance it out because it's a larger object, so it's up here. Okay, so those are just the tips, and then I'm coming back in and getting that rectangle shape. The pinky's on the end, so we get to see the rest of it kind of connecting, and then the middle finger is kind of trying to come down. So, and then if you're ever like not sure, like, oh, that round tip didn't look right on this thumb, you know, it looks kind of awkward, always kind of flatten one edge, and that usually helps define it when it's not a direct on but a side angle. So not too bad. And then last one, because I know this is getting kind of long. Just hold the phone in a different manner. And this is kind of similar to like the side view because the majority of this is just, oh, I changed already, is just the thumb joint, little square, thumb tip. And then this one's nice because you can kind of start your rectangle for the hand, and then this is kind of like where the finger would be in the background. I'm just going to guess it out for you guys so you can kind of see the shape that it would have been per se, or that's all right. Had there been no phone. Okay, and then that extra padding there. So that's, I always think that's interesting because like when you squish your hand, the two pads kind of come together, and so that's what's happening right there. Okay, so thumb joint, thumb, and then I didn't draw the photo. Should have done that first. But there it is. Okay, and then, okay, this is where the palm is, that second squishy pad, right? And then you kind of ignore what's going on with the rest of the fingers because they're hidden. My phone's bigger than that phone. But anyway, that's the gist of it, you guys, of how to break down hand shapes and how to use that in whether you're working with reference or whether you're trying to get a shape by looking at your hand or just trying to do a hand. Just remember getting the palm pentagon shape will help you lay in the shape of your fingers. And just remember your fingers have knuckles, and you can break each segment down into a rectangle if that makes it easier. I hope this video helped a little bit. This is kind of my process and how I do things and how I think about things and how I break down things. I don't know if this is very tutorial-y accurate in terms of helping you kind of replicate it. But follow along, draw with me, see if that helps. Give me some comments and let me know if this was good, if this was bad, if you want to see me do something different, more in depth, less in depth. Let me know because I want to help you guys out and I want to give good advice. So this is just a quick breakdown of how I do things with hands, and I hope that maybe helped you think about things a little differently. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks for watching Animation Girl. Check out these fun videos and don't forget to subscribe.